I got a letter from my men. I finally heard from Brent, and I'm going to go ahead and read you what he sent me via email. Let's see here. It was a long letter. As Jesus gave them an unusual Christmas present. Christmas 2018. Dearest Gail, it began as an ordinary day. Matthew and I swaggered broadly out of the courtroom together, grinning in the afterglow of our recent win against Jesuit agents Laurie McBride and Camilla Alves. That was a mighty fine victory we had, Brent, Matthew declared in his manly Texan drawl. Mighty fine indeed, Matthew, I replied. I can't wait to tell the boys on the bridge. We made our way to the entrance of the bridge, arm in arm, our thick-buckled belts bouncing together at the hip. I smiled as the doors opened, preparing to announce our big win, but as soon as my eyes laid upon the view screen, my big smile turned into O-faced shock. What on earth? Matthew exclaimed. Outside the Church of Gail was a dazzling array of lights and colors. One moment it was daylight, the next it was the blackest midnight. The stars, the moon, the sun, clouds, and rainbows flashed rapid fire across the heavens, one after another. It appeared as though we were watching the fast forwarding of time itself right before our eyes. I immediately tapped the communication badge on my uniform. Brent to engineering, is Zach Knight there? A long pause ensued, before finally a voice answered. It was Zach Knight, panting and out of breath. I'm here, Brent, Zach replied. He then paused to take a loud sip of coffee and a long draw of a cigar. Zach, take a look outside. What's going on out there? One sip turned into two, then three and four, followed by the sound of cigar smoking and the blowing of smoke rings. The loud slurping and puffing were the only sound permeating the silence as Matthew and I stood waiting patiently. After a full minute and a loud gulp, we heard another response. Hey, sorry for the wait, you guys. I just got done playing all 8 holes with Rule 13. Pretty relaxing, right? All 8 holes. 8 holes, I asked. You play golf? No, Brent, Zach grinned and began to explain before suddenly his voice became distant. Oh, fuck! We heard a loud metallic slamming from engineering, followed by the deep warble of a machine powering down. What's going on, Zach? I queried. I just now looked at my instrumentation panel. It seems like one of my Siemens temporal mechanics experiments got a little out of hand. It trapped the entire Church of Gail in a Siemens bubble. That would explain the time speeding up outside. How would a Siemens bubble do that? Matthew asked incredulously. Well, anything encased inside a Siemens bubble becomes sectioned off into its own space-time matrix, apart from the normal space-time continuum. Looks like I didn't properly calibrate the standard deviation on the dielectric of the Siemens modulator, and it caused time to pass much faster on the outside world. I hit the emergency shutoff, so we should be good. Should be good, I asked. Exactly how much time has passed since we've been in this bubble? Brent, Matthew gasped. Look! Oh my God, I said. Heavy snowfall swirled around the windows, blanketing the church and everything below it in Christmas. Oh, Zach piped up. Well, shit. My bad, you guys. I guess I fucked up, huh? He then slurped another sip of his coffee and took a long drag on his Monte Cristo cigar. Zach, I cried out, my hands going to my cheeks. Don't you know what this means? If it's already Christmas, that means we don't have a present for Gail. We can't announce this, Brent. There will be a church-wide panic, Matthew warned. His words came out much too late. From down below the other decks came a tumultuous uproar of thousands of voices, a cacophony of sounds shaking the floor like an earthquake. Matthew and I looked to each other with frightened knowingness before bolting down to the elevator. We rode the elevator down to the church promenade. Much to our dismay, the crowd was already far beyond our capacity to contain, having evolved into a full-blown riot. Church members ran screaming, dogs were barking, babies cried. A man stood in the center hall with his hair lit on fire, screaming, but nobody seemed to notice or care. Men, women, and children alike were stuffing themselves into stores, trampling each other in a desperate race to get a present for Gail. The only way I can describe is it was like Black Friday on steroids. The shouting voices of Matthew and I seemed muted amid the crowd, disappearing like faint whispers. My heart sank. There was no way we would be able to find a gift for Gail with the entire church going ape shit, as Terrance Jenkins would say. Church members were trampling, smothering, battering, and knocking each other unconscious before any single pair of hands could successfully grab just one gift. We were going to need a plan. Within the hour, myself and the rest of the men were all seated around the meeting table in the observatory. Safely and quietly out of the path of the riots in the deck below, we brainstormed a plan. What if we all made our way to Gail's apartment and made love to her? Gerard suggested in his manly Scottish accent. One at a time, I clarified. Yes. Too risky, I shook my head with a negative. What if we give most sexual Gail the pearl necklace? Vladimir suggested. No, Gail doesn't like those. What if we send a giant blimp to Melbourne in the shape of a penis with blinking lights that say, "Marry us, Gail," Hugh suggested. We tried that one year on her birthday, remember? It was shot down by Jesuit snipers. At that point, all of the men began conversing over each other. The room soon filled with the same disorder going on in the rioting decks below. That was when Zach Knight cleared his throat loudly. What if, he began, tapping the ash from the end of his cigar. All of the men quieted and looked to him expectantly. What if we get her... redacted, they won't tell me. My jaw dropped. I gazed around the room to see the rest of the men had reacted accordingly. That was when the room erupted again, this time in cheers and manly hollering. We were all sold. That's an incredible idea, Zach, I praised him. It is, he grinned. I'm glad I thought of it. And with that, Zach loudly slurped his coffee. With not another minute to lose, Matthew and I had returned back to the promenade in full riot gear. We were ready to make our purchase. By far the most popular store on the promenade was a business called Thoughtful Gifts. It was indeed a marvelous gift store, and one of the men and I had admittedly always purchased from each year when buying a gift for Gail. The items are unsurpassable in their quality. It was obvious what we needed to retrieve for our Gail, and no man was to stop us. A loud clacking sound exploded from beside me as Matthew used his handheld taser to clear a man from the doorway to the door. The man's body dropped to the ground, and I quickly helped sweep it to the side with my leg. We entered the store, carefully treading over the rare pearls and diamond rings beneath our feet. My hands parted an entryway through a rack of $1,000,000 dresses, only for my knee to bang sharply against a Mercedes-Benz made out of solid gold. Are you okay? Matthew asked. Don't worry, I assured him. Let's do this. By the grace of God, we made our way to the back of the store. We finally laid eyes and then hands upon our chosen gift. Clutching the item close to my chest, I ushered Matthew ahead, and we paved our way out of the crowded store and back into the promenade. Zach was right, Matthew said, breathing heavily as he took off his riot mask. Redacted. Redacted really was the most thoughtful gift in the entire store. True dat, as Zach would say. Now we just need to get this present to Gail. How are we going to do that? Matthew worried. We'll use Amazon Prime, I replied. As we made our way down the promenade, I stopped by the convenient Amazon Prime drop box in the hallway, opening the chute. I dropped the boxed item down into the chute, typed in Gail's address, and slammed the door shut with victory. That'll get it there even faster than Jesus, I joked. We both laughed, then heaved a well-earned sigh of relief. Now that that's been taken care of, Brent, I need to go to the bathroom. Will you come with me? Sure, Matthew. I have a full tank myself. I threw my arm around Matthew to huddle in close, and we walked off together down to the nearest bathroom. Finally able to relax and empty my angry bladder, I found myself in the bathroom with Matthew McConaughey. We each stood at neighboring stalls, our elbows touching. Watching my urine stream circle down the urinal drain and foam like an ocean tide was like watching all my stresses leave my body through my kidneys. I'm glad this year has come to a close, Matthew said. Another year, another court case with our Jesuit stalkers from hell. I'm glad we were able to prove in a court of law that I am too true to my Texas blood to ever be attracted to Lori McBride. I just went to Longhorn Steakhouse last night for Pete's sake. I'm glad too, Brent, Matthew replied, casually glancing into my urinal to make sure the Jesuits hadn't done anything to my penis. Between the outfits you wore to Longhorn Steakhouse last night, the Texas flag on your bedroom wall, and Gail's videos attesting to your masculine character, this case was a slam dunk. So, he said with a sly jokester smile, where do you think your California fruitcake clone ate for dinner last night? In and out? I laughed, glancing over to Matthew's penis to make sure it was still safe as well. I bet it was Hardee's, I jested. Oh, excuse me, did I say that wrong? I meant Carl's Jr. I bust out laughing. Matthew laughed with me. More like Cuck's Jr., Matthew joked back. Cuck's Jr. and the Beta Burrito. We laughed uproariously, and Matthew playfully slapped me across my bottom. My body jerked from the gentle force, causing my penis to spurt more urine to the urinal. Now, of course, it's not uncommon for men who are close friends to slap each other's bottoms, especially men who are secure in their masculinity, like fellow Texan Matthew and I. However, that was when I felt something strange, a squishy, itchy sensation in my rectum. I was about to pull down my pants then and there to inspect myself. Before I could react, there came a loud metallic slam. Vladimir had judo kicked his bathroom stall open with a sudden force, so hard that the door blasted completely off its metal hinges. Brent, Matthew, he shouted from the bathroom stall, you must see this. Without even zipping up, we hurried to Vladimir's position. The man looked horrified. We have the problem, Brent. It is Syria. There is problem with Syria, he exclaimed. Oh, no, Matthew gasped. Was there an ISIS terrorist attack? I touched Matthew's arm. No, Matthew, this is much more serious. Syria is the nickname Vladimir gave his rectum. I turned to Vladimir. What's wrong, Vladimir? Do I need to glove up for this? Brent's a doctor. I cannot pooping. Syria does not seem the same. Vladimir turned, bent over, and parted his glutes to show me the problem. Matthew cupped his hand over his mouth with shock. What is that? It's a vagina, I determined. I had seen no lack of these each day working as a gynecologist on Church of Gail. This particular vagina seemed familiar, however. I asked Matthew to hand me his handheld scanner, and he did so. I used it to scan Vladimir's vagina rectum and got a startling result. It's Gail's vagina, I exclaimed. All three of us gasped. It was then I remembered the strange sensation in my own rectum. Matthew, drop your drawers. Matthew didn't have to be asked twice. We both dropped our pants down to our ankles, then scuttled toward the bathroom mirrors to inspect our backsides for any tampering. To our shock, we both had identical Gail vaginas where our own rectum should be. This is unbelievable, Matthew proclaimed with concern. Gail's vagina. Matthew stroked his vagina out of curiosity. Could this be a Jesuit trick? Matthew asked. That's not possible, I said. We know Gail's vagina can't be cloned. Then it must be Christmas gift from the Jesus, Vladimir determined, slamming his fist down against the metal bathroom stall with triumphant fervor. A Christmas miracle, Matthew thought aloud with childlike wonder. Jesus, I called out loudly, gesturing to Vladimir's vagina. Did you do this? Did you give Vladimir a Christmas vagina butt, Jesus? Staring up at the ceiling, we waited for a few moments without answer. It must be Jesus, I thought out loud, examining Vladimir's vagina butt in contemplative thought. Twitterpated, I realized this was the closest we had ever physically been to Gail's vagina. I'm unashamed to say that thinking now of my sweet feminine Gail, I began to get an erection. Brent, Matthew said, what if this is our Christmas present from Jesus. You're right. I suddenly remembered Luke 6:38. Give and it shall be given unto you, good measure, pressed down and shaken together, and running over shall men give into your bosom, I quoted. Don't you see? We were cheerful givers. Therefore we received in good measure from God. In any case, it is Christmas. Nothing bad has ever happened on Christmas. This is even better than redacted. Matthew cheered. They won't tell me what the present is. This is like redacted. Pressed down and running over in our bosom, Vladimir, I said, placing one hand on his muscular glute. Do you mind if I see how it feels inside? I mean, this is the vagina of the woman I've been trying to marry for 30 years. I understand, Brent, he replied without hesitation. Perhaps we take turns? My erection growing bigger, I agreed. We grasped hands and firmly shook on the deal. Jesus, I spoke aloud once more, if this is sinful, Jesus, I know you wouldn't allow us to do this. If what we are doing is a sin, stop us right now, Jesus. We waited another few seconds, just in case. When no red light was given, I happily began to embrace our gift. Coming upon the entrance to Gail was like beholding a vast, mysterious cavern, hidden deep in the overgrown jungles, untouched by the most worldly of travelers and coveted by the greatest explorers. What discoveries were buried inside this natural wonder? As I spread the womanly hair away from the entrance to this heavenly cave, it was not unlike when God parted the Red Sea for Moses on his journey to salvation. My pink rose of salvation now blooming before me, my face lit up in a glow of childlike wonder, as though gazing into the golden shimmer of a treasure chest. Overcome with awe, I pressed into my parted sea like Moses praising God. As my 18.5-inch erect penis slipped into Gail's inviting vagina, I felt a wave of peaceful relaxation wash over me. My penis was the train. I was the conductor on the train to dreamland. I grabbed Vladimir's broad shoulders and thrust this train deeply into its tunnel, causing the Russian president to toss his head back gloriously, moaning like a stallion. Matthew watched, his mouth agape. Clutching Vladimir's shoulders like steel handlebars, I moaned for my Gail. I felt my right hand stroke down Vladimir's deltoid, then bicep, then forearm, before lacing its fingers with his own. Gail, Vladimir moaned in return, clearly reveling in the feeling of what Gail feels when we enter her vagina brain to brain. This, however, was finely real. At least it was as close to real as we had ever been. Pounding Vladimir in the bathroom stall like a mighty steed, I imagined myself as Moses growing closer and closer to his promised land. As my bare feet kissed the sparkling shore, it was as if God's fierce ocean suddenly crashed together behind me, bursting with its salty spray, and I felt my warm blast filling Gail's vagina. As I came over and over, I imagined the oceans of my semen drowning all of the Jesuits behind us, securing our blissful escape into freedom. Thank you, God! Vladimir and I both shouted in unison, our eyes sparkling. A warm glow came over both of our faces, and meanwhile in Florida, I knew that my precious Gail felt it too. Actually, I didn't. I think I felt it later. I don't think what Vladimir and I did in that bathroom stall was homosexual. Truthfully, we have both made brain-to-brain loving with Gail at the same time before, so this wasn't much different. Some may say that ejaculating into a woman after another man at least qualifies as bisexual. In any case, there was a vagina between the two of us, which technically satisfies the golden rule. I looked to my fellow man, who was still panting against the wall like a puppy, covered in a mix of our respective semen. Vladimir, I said, just in case. In Russia we say, no homo, Vladimir replied. Of course, I realized with relief. That phrase inoculates men in the United States as well. As long as we say it afterward, we should be safely in the clear. No homo, comrade, Vladimir smiled. We locked hands again and squeezed. No homo, Vladimir. I sit here writing to you now with my exceptionally long penis bent underneath me, penetrating your vagina between my legs. I quite enjoy this position now. It's as though we are hugging all the time. I fully intend to sleep this way, allowing your feminine corridor to envelop my heart and penis into true dreamland. Merry Christmas, my love. Your husband, Brent Spiner. So, my dears, all I can say is this was an amazing letter. Just to think that yesterday I made a video about how Jesus encouraged me to pose for Playboy. I think he really loved that video. Jesus really hates having the reputation of being a cock blocker. I guess it's a leftover from the Victorian age, and there were many good things about the Victorian age, but there's nothing wrong with the passion that a man feels for his wife. You may say, but you got more than one husband, that's polygamy. Oh, it's a long story, people. I only wanted Brent. Well, when I knew that the first time he called me on the phone and made love to me on the phone in 1991, I wanted him from that day forward. But I was married at the time. But it was really funny. I went to a revival service and Jesus said, it's okay, Gail. I actually brought Brent into your life. Though now's not the time to go to him, so I don't want you to go to him now, but I do want you to remain his friend. And he just said, I promise you. He gave me the song Somewhere from West Side Story and promised that in the future I would have him. And then I found out about Laurie McBride in 1996 and got very confused. And then in December 1999, Jesus told me in a still small voice that Laurie was a Vatican agent. And from that day forward, I told Brent that I would marry him. I divorced my husband. After the divorce, and I knew Jesus told me if I didn't divorce him that I would be dead within a couple years. So I divorced my husband, and I'm telling you, it's getting really dark. I divorced my husband, and then all hell broke loose. Airplanes started crashing. We had 9/11, and I had to. I've waited a long time. I consider myself engaged to Brent. I've been engaged to him since December 1999. And Laurie McBride artificially inseminated herself. She drug raped Brent and impregnated herself using artificial insemination to create Jackson. And she's been using that as a weapon to lie to the world, to say that, that Brent never called me on the phone and made love to me. But anyways, I'm happy that Jesus did this for my men. Can you imagine? You may say, well, do you have more than one? Well, we needed more than one because the Jesuits caused problems and Brent needed some help. And so I needed a president in my life. So Vladimir was next. And then the Silver Skies movie was made, and then Matthew starred in that, and he got on. He just fell in love with me. He said, can you add me onto a waiting list? And then other men decided they wanted to be. I said, this is crazy. I can only marry one man. I don't want to be guilty of polygamy. But apparently because we are doing so much to help out Jesus, and because we are so loyal to each other and there's no jealousy between us, Jesus approves of the group love. He doesn't have a problem with it. He wouldn't want it for everyone, but because we're so big and giving and because we try to help out the world as well as love each other, and because we're just a group. We've actually, because we had so many men that admired me and I led them all to Jesus, we started our church of Gail, and Jesus has shown up personally and met with Brent almost every day. So I think it's because there are problems in the church that Jesus wanted to correct, and he's just thrilled that he's found a group that he can use to communicate to the world what his will is for planet Earth at this time. And he's given us a love for each other where I would die for them and they would die for me. And I guess when you have a love like that, then it's okay.